So in the first 45 minutes of the session, I am up a ton. This is going to be the session that allows me to coast to well over $100 an hour. And then let's rewind a second. That's me, Marc Goone, and I'm trying to make $100 an hour playing low stakes poker. Before this week, I was just off the pace at about 98 bucks an hour, but then, well, you're not gonna believe it. In this episode, I play 2 roller coaster rides of a session at Hustler Casino and try to close out the challenge strong as I near the light at the end of the tunnel. Please, poker gods, release me from the low stakes confines. Please, I beg you. Can I stay on track to win $100 an hour at 5-5? Let's find out.
Down bad, bounce back, boy, I'm different. Watch how I handle my business. Watch with the hands not ticking. Listen, that's that drum kick, boom, coming out of my system.
All right, jumping into our first hand of the session at Hustler, we're going to open King 10 of clubs from the low jack to 25. Small blind's going to call and heads up to a flop, which comes 3-3 deuce with a couple spades, just betting my entire range, choosing the size where they raise off their strong shit, call with their weak shit, hopefully. So I go $25 here. He's going to call. Turn is a 7 of spades, and on this turn, he can certainly have some flushes. Recreational players generally play their flush draws a little bit more on the passive side. So I'm going to choose a size here that's going to incentivize him to raise off his flushes right now, but also continue with some weaker hands, maybe like pocket 6s or pocket 5s here on this turn that are just going to call turn and then going to have to fold to a lot of pressure on the river. So I go $50. He puts in a call once again. River is a queen of clubs. At this point, pretty confident that he does not have a flush. In general, when you choose a small size on the turn, they raise off a lot of their flushes. If I was betting for value here, I'd probably go around 175, 200, trying to get called by a hand like pocket 9s with a spade or something like that. So I'm going to size up here, make sure we ensure the range fold. I go 375, and the small blind quickly gets out of the way. All right, next hand, here's some fun table talk. We open to 25 doll hairs in early position with pocket 10s. Button is going to 3-bet, and after he 3-bets, I ask him what he has.
What do you have? 8s.
You have 8s? Pocket 8s?
No, see, let me get. I have 8.
Oh no, I meant like your cards. Like what cards do you?
He was talking about the last time.
Yeah, I have pocket 8.
No, this hand, you have 8s?
Yeah.
Okay. I put in the call. We're going to a flop, which comes king 8-6. I check it over. He goes $60 into 155. Small size here, so I'm going to continue once and see what he does on the turn. And now at this point, he asks what I have.
What do you have?
Well, I asked you and you didn't tell me. I got pocket 10s. I beat pocket 8s now. I am going to check it over, and he goes 140. Now at this point, recreational players under double barrel, especially in 3-bet pots. It's just pretty likely he's got something. I'm not sure he has the strongest hand when he chooses this size on the flop and this size on the turn, but I think he's probably got something that he likes. So I don't really like check raising turns for value just because it looks so strong, but I want to take the lead here. Don't want to let the river go check. I actually think maybe just leading this turn is best here for maybe 250. That actually minimizes fold equity. So I'm going to put in the check raise to 340. He is going to call. River's the innocuous deuce of diamonds, SPR of about 0.5 here, only about 400 and some change behind. And I think he's probably not folding a hand like king, queen, king, jack, something like that. Certainly not ace, king. I'm not sure he has ace, king at a high frequency when he chooses the size on the flop and turn, but I don't think he's folding a king for a half pot size shove on this river. So I put the money in, and he actually snap folds and said he had queen high. So maybe a hand like queen jack or something like that that picked up a straight draw on the turn makes some sense.
No, I'm not bluffing. I told him what I had.
You said pocket 10.
I said pocket 10. I have pocket 10. I don't lie about my cards.
All right, very next hand here. I think I somehow chose the wrong decision on every single street in this hand. Let's talk about it. We've got pocket aces under the gun, open to 25. A for-profit player is going to call in the low jack. The big blind's coming along. We are 3 ways, and the flop comes 5-3-3. 3. And with one player in position to us and one player out of position, I don't expect this flop to get stabbed all that much, especially because the low jack is a thinking player. He's not just going to be monkey stabbing here. So with only one player in position, I'm just going to bet myself. I go $30. Low jack calls next to act, which means he's probably got a hand that he likes here now. And the big blind folds and gets out of the way. Turn is not a great card for us. It's a king of hearts bringing a backdoor flush draw. The reason why I think this is not a great card for us is I think most of the low jack's range is going to be hands like 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, stuff like that. And this king, well, that downgrades a lot of those hands. They put you on ace king when you raise pre-flop. So I think we're going to have to size down here to make sure those hands continue to call. We also have the ace of spades in our hand, which makes it much less likely that he has a flush draw himself. So I am going to go very small here on this turn, targeting hands like pocket 8s, pocket 9s. I go $40. The low jack calls. Now the river is the 9 of spades here. I just think he's mostly got hands like pocket 8s, pocket 7s, maybe some pocket 9s for a boat now. I don't think he really has many flushes. So I guess a case could be made here for just blocking very, very tiny on this river. But I think we're kind of running out of value here against hands like 8s, 7s, etc., especially when the flush gets there on the river. So I'm actually going to check it over. He checks it back. We know we're good once he checks it back. And we put the chip on our card. And he actually shows ace king. We win the absolute minimum here. He didn't 3-bet pre-flop. He called the tiny bet on the turn with ace king. And then he just checked it back on the river. And feeling pretty bad about this one. I do think we played it okay against the range that we assigned him. Just didn't think he would have much ace king here. I guess it makes sense from his perspective to have ace king. You know, we are the only 2 regs at the table, and if he wants to flat to keep the more recreational players in behind with a stronger holding, I guess that makes some sense. It's something I would do. But nevertheless, we win the minimum in this one. All right, next hand here, double board PLO bum pot. We've got ace jack 8-6, and we're 8-handed, so $200 out there. Flop 1 comes king 10 queen, so we flop the nuts, and there's also a couple diamonds out there, and we've got ace jack of diamonds. We do have a royal flush draw to go along with the nut straight, and board number 2 is queen 6-3 with 1 diamond, so we've got middle pair and backdoor nut diamond draw. Checks over to us. We're in the hijack, so we're in late position here. Only 2 players left to act behind us. I'm just going to pot it here. Now, if we just had a naked straight up top, I probably would just check and hope to see a blank card on the turn. But with the redraw, with the middle pair and the backdoor flush draw on the second board, I think we've got enough going on here. Let's just start piling in money here with the nuts on 1 board and try to drive players out of this pot. We bet 200. An EP player calls, and we're going heads up to a turn, which is not advantageous for us. It's a queen of clubs up top pairing the board, and a 3 of spades down below also pairing the board. And now EP leads for pot. He leads for $600 here. And at this point, we're just getting scooped by hands like queen 10, queen king. Don't love this turn for us. One of the only bad turn cards in the deck up top. And I think at this point, with nothing going on the second board and now losing 2 boats on the top board, unfortunately, we just have to fold. Big pot.
Hello.
You know, I see a lot of people saying you're only putting a lot of money in when you're bluffing. Well, to those people saying that, go ahead and suck on this one. So EP is going to limp. Low jack ISOs to $25. My MO, play 3-bet pots heads up in position against recreational players. So I'm going to 3-bet with pocket 7s here on the button to 75. Now the EP limper is actually going to cold call. So he limped and calls a 75 cold. Brings the low jack along as well. And flop comes pretty good for us. Ace 7-6 with 3 hearts. So it is monotone, but we flop middle set here. Checks over to us. Going to bet small here. We go 100, and the EP player calls. Now the turn is a 9 of diamonds. We would love for a hand like ace 10 suited without a heart, of course, to continue here. A hand like ace 5 suited to continue here. We're going to have to go relatively small on this board to get those to call. He does have a bunch of flushes here as well. So his range is really strong stuff and really weak stuff, and we would like for the weak stuff to continue calling. Just really hard for him to have a hand like the stiff king of hearts or queen of hearts hand, an offsuit hand here when he cold calls a 3-bet and then calls next to act on the flop. So I'm gonna go small here. I go 150, and now surprisingly, he min check raises to 300. I think this is more indicative of 2-pair hands, maybe sometimes a straight, but I think he's got more 2-pair than he's got straights, and he's got about 500 behind. We're gonna get to see what he does on the river. So I am going to call. River is now a 10 of diamonds, and after thinking for a little bit, he is going to check, probably just get greedy and jam if he did have a straight. I think his most likely holding is going to be a hand like 2-pair, and if I was bluffing here on this river, if I somehow got here with a hand like king queen with the king of hearts or something like that, I'm not sure I would feel comfortable making a hand like ace 9 or ace 6 fold ever here on this river for a half pot size bet. So on a board where there's a 1-liner to a straight and a flush out there, I'm going to jam here with fourth set here for value. I put it in, he tanks for a while. Finally, he is going to call. We show our hand and we are good. Hello.
Hey Mark, how you doing?
We are here with Frankie C, who wants to make poker a spectacle. What's that mean, by the way?
Making poker a spectacle is turning what we see in the movies, like some of my favorite movies are Rounders, Molly's Game, and like if you watch their poker scenes, it's so cool, and you don't need to be a poker fan to enjoy it, and just like football has touchdowns, I want poker to have their own special flair.
I like that. Okay, so I'm trying to make $100 an hour playing low stakes.
I've seen.
Do you think it's possible?
Dude, I grew up playing poker in Texas. I 100% think it's possible. I totally believe in you. I think that I don't know the LA game very well, so like you have to know the game to say confidently you could do that. But I've seen a lot crazier shit happen. I think you're a great player. You make great videos, so yeah, I believe in you.
How do you know I'm not a huge fish?
I don't know for sure, but maybe they can let me know.
All right, so $100 an hour is possible, low stakes.
Yes, I agree.
You heard it here. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Of course.
All right, next hand here, double board PLO bum pot. 7 people in there, so a $175 pot. We've got Jack 664 with 3 hearts, and board 1 comes King 7-5 with a couple hearts, so we flop a flush draw and a straight draw, and board number 2 comes 9-6-5, so we flop middle set. So we've got pretty good hands on both boards, but not the nuts, and this is one of those spots where if it goes like 3, 4, 5 ways, we're just getting scooped all the time, but if we can get it heads up and apply a ton of pressure, we are most likely winning on one of the boards at least, and this is just one of those spots where we feel pretty good if we can get it heads up. So checks all the way around to us in the cutoff. I pot it for 175, folds all the way around back to the low jack, who is going to call. Turn is an ace of diamonds up top, so it does not help us on that board, and a king of diamonds down below. So think probably our pocket sixes are still good at a relatively high frequency, but if he does just have something going on the top board, just try to push out his equity here. So we go 525 for pot again. He is going to call. Now the river is an ace of spades up top, pairing the board, so we just brick everything, and a queen of diamonds down below, bringing backdoor diamonds in, and now he is going to donk jam all in. So we just completely brick up top, and down below we lose to flushes now. And at this point, I think we'd be calling, just praying for a chop at best. So I am going to make a disciplined fold here on this bad run out. Hard to lose both boards here when we flop such strong hands on both boards, but just not the advantageous run out we were looking for. And I think just folding here on this river is the move. All right, next hand here, another double board PLO bum pot. Only 6 people in there, so 150 this time. We got a pretty good hand. Ace, king, king, jack here. So we've got pocket kings with a couple of diamonds. Board number 1 comes 8-5-5. Board deuce comes ace 4 deuce. So not the best flops for us necessarily, although both boards have spades and we do have the ace of spades in our hands. This one's going to check around. We are going to check back on the button. Turn is an 8 of diamonds up top and a jack of spades down below. So now we have 2 pair on the second board, even though a flush has come in. We do have the ace of spades in our hand. It's going to check all the way around to us, and we bet $100 here, just trying to take this down. Under the gun is going to call, and hijack is coming along as well. 3 ways to the river. 4 of diamonds down below and 8 of clubs up top. So pretty good for us because now it is super unlikely that someone has an 8. We can just apply a ton of pressure. I think we can get players to fold smaller flushes on the second board where we have the ace of spades, and on the first board there, I don't think it's likely that anybody has an 8 because there's 2 8s out there and a third 8 on the second board. So I think we can get someone to fold like a 5 here, and I think this is just a pretty good spot. I'm not normally ever bluffing in these situations where I don't have one board on lockdown, or I don't think I have the best hand on one board, but I do think because of those factors that we talked about, having the ace of spades in our hand, someone probably has a weak flush, someone probably has a 5, I do think we can apply a ton of pressure and get both players to fold here at a high frequency. So I am going to go pot 450 here. Both players fold, and we actually get this bluff through on the river. Big pot alert. Immediate next hand, the hijack is going to open to $25. This is a recreational player. Generally, I'm just 3-betting to try to isolate, get it heads up in position, but I don't think our hand is strong enough with 4-3 of hearts here. But I am on the button, and this is one of those spots where I make exceptions. I like to come along and call and see flops with position, especially because the blinds are not squeezing at any decent frequency here. We're just going to get to realize we're going to get to see a flop. So I come along. Flop comes pretty beautiful for us, 7-3-3. And with the pot being 95 here, checks over to the hijack, the original pre-flop raiser, and he goes 120 into 95. At this point, I think it is very obvious that this guy has a hand like pocket 10s, pocket jacks plus here, and he is trying to protect. If I was bluffing in this situation, I would never raise this guy because I think we have 0 fold equity on this board. So I'm actually going to put in the raise right now with a value hand, just figuring he is never folding pocket 10s plus here, and I'm just going to try to get the money in by the turn. So I go with a relatively small raise. We don't need to raise that big. We only started this hand about 950 effective. I raised to 400, and good news for us, he just jams all in here for 950. We snap it off. Turn is an ace of diamonds. Don't really love it because now we lose to pocket aces. River is a deuce of hearts, and he shows pocket kings. Of course, we are good, and we scoop a nice, big, juicy pot. All right, next hand here with a very interesting river decision, very nuanced. I want to talk about it. The straddle is on. We open to $40 from the hijack with queen jack off. The button is going to call, heads up to a flop, which comes 8-4 deuce rainbow. I am just checking my entire range out of position, but he checks it back, which is pretty good news for us on a dynamic board because players will just always bet with a hand like 8x here, hand like pocket 9s, etc. Turn is a 5 of spades. It does bring in a couple draws here like ace 3 or 6-7, but I think we're going to hear from those when the flop goes check, check. So I'm just going to bet 90 here on this turn. I do think if he has a flush draw, I think if he has a hand like 6s or pocket 3s or 7s, he's not holding for any size. So we like to maximize value against those holdings and then blast them off on the river. He is going to call. River is an 8 of clubs, and on a paired board, I actually decided to go small here because I do think players get really, really sticky with hands like pocket 6s, pocket 7s, stuff like that on this board. And although I don't think he ever has an 8 here, I do think he could occasionally show up with a hand like ace 3 for the second nut straight on the turn that wouldn't raise off to a big size, and maybe even possibly a hand like 6-7 suited sometimes. So I do think we can run into some brick walls here, but I go very small, just trying to get the flush draws to fold. He is going to call. We flip over our hand proudly, and he shows pocket 6s. I'm okay with the thought process here, I believe, but maybe the river size, I could have just gone 90, save myself 20 bucks, 10 bucks, something like that here on this river. Next hand here, this is a doozy. EP limps, we ISO to $30 with pocket quigglies in the low jack. The hijack and button are going to call. Now the big blind, who we have not seen 3-bet much at all, if any today, squeezes to 140. This is already precarious. We're just going to call here because this is so under 3-bet with pocket queens. And the button is going to come along as well. 3 ways to a flop, which comes 6 deuce deuce. Now the big blind goes 130. I think he would choose a larger size if he did have a hand like kings or aces here at a high percentage of the time. I think we've got the best hand with queens. Would not mind the button coming in behind us on a board that's this dry. Not really many bad cards for us except an ace or a king. So we're gonna call. Now the button's going to raise to 440 here. I do think this can be worse hands some of the time, just trying to protect maybe a hand like tens or jacks or something like that. But now the big blind is going to call, and alarm bells are going off in my head at this point. It is just unlikely that queens are ahead of both the button and the big blind. I think the big blind likely has a hand like aces here that just bet small on the flop because he just didn't feel the need to protect from all that much. Not really sure what the button has. Maybe still pocket tens or pocket jacks. We're just going to fold right here with pocket queens. Turn is a 9 of hearts. Now the big blind is going to come out and donk jam for 400. The button calls. River is a 5 of hearts, and look at this showdown. The button shows 5 deuce offsuit. So flopped trips and just fast played it on the flop. The big blind has king deuce of spades. So flopped trips and went very, very small and just got sucked out on the river here. So maybe reevaluating this pre-flop read when people squeeze that it's just going to be top of range. This guy squeezed with king deuce of spades. So probably should just be 4-betting here against this particular player. Gonna make a note and notice that he only squeezed to just over a 4x size over an open and a bunch of calls, and that this guy can be light in the future when he squeezes. All right, next hand here. This is a fun one, I promise. EP opens to $15. This is a for-profit player, and I'm generally just doing a lot of flatting when there's a for-profit player who opens, especially if there are a ton of recreational players behind. Obviously just not a very strong for-profit player if they're opening to 3x in a game where no one's 3-betting and everybody's calling a ton, but whatever, neither here nor there. We're going to call with king 9 of clubs, let in a bunch of the recs behind us. Now the button, small blind, and big blind are going to call as well. 5 ways to a flop, which comes 7, 6, for rainbow. Checks through. Turn is a 3 of clubs, giving us a backdoor king high flush draw. At this point, it is going to check over to the EP original pre-flop opener, who bets $25, and with a one-liner to a straight out there, we are going to call. Folds around to the small blind, who check raises to 75. EP player folds. At this point, we just know the small blind has a 5 100% of the time. Nice thing about our hand is I think we can get value when we do hit our hand on a club river. They don't really look at the backdoor flush draw for whatever reason. If the front door flush draw comes in, I do think we can bluff, and if the board pairs, I think we can also consider bluffing. So we are going to call here with quite a bit of money behind. River is a 2 of diamonds, bringing in the front door flush. It's small blind now, but 75. This is a size that just doesn't want to face a lot of heat, doesn't want to face a raise. If I did river a flush here on this river, I'd probably raise relatively small, maybe 250, 300, just trying to get a hero call from a 5. So because of that, I just think we have to go small to get a call here, while the bluffs are just going to print. So I raise to 775 here, just knowing that we're going to get a 5 to fold almost all of the time. Small blind folds quickly here, and the small blind shows 5 deuce, of course, for a straight. And we say,
I had to pay for it.
That's the king.
Oh shit. Was it river a diamond?
Am I right?
I thought it was a club.
all right, guys, pretty good session. Won about $1,700 and some change over 7 hours. We're back on pace over $100 an hour, but it's gonna come right down to the wire. And you know what they say.
You got beans.
You got beans. All right, jumping into the second session of the week here at Hustler. Marco, make sure you put the second session. Everybody loves to know it's a second session. We opened at $25 from under the gun with 10-9 of hearts and EP calls, and I say,
All right, I definitely have the best hand right now.
You probably do.
There's no, but we're gonna see in a second.
Probably. You're out, you're like, nope.
flop comes king 10-5 with a couple of diamonds, heads up, single raise pots out of position, just checking my entire range. We check, he checks it back. Turn is a 10 of spades. I'm going to go small here because I think he would bet king X at a high frequency on the flop. We have to target pretty weak hands here, maybe like some straight draws, under pair, stuff like that. So I'm going to go really small here on this turn. I go 25. He is going to tank and almost fold, but then he's going to put in the call, and this is important. Now the river is a jack of diamonds, and at this point, once again, I think I need to go really, really small here. Maybe targeting hands like jack 9 or something like that. So I'm gonna go 40 on this river, and now he is going to raise to 150. And I ask if he'll show me one card.
Show me one card. See, that makes me want to call.
When he obliges here and shows me the ace of diamonds, a couple things going on. Number one, I think if he did have ace x of diamonds, he would just bet on the flop quite a bit when we checked to him. Number two, I think his reaction on the turn when he was thinking about folding, I thought that was genuine. So I don't think he's gonna fold the nut flush draw by any means on the turn. He probably just snap call, right? So I don't think he has an ace high flush here at any frequency. So I'm going to put in the call with trips, and we are good versus ace 7 with the ace of diamonds. And just a couple things going on here. Maybe you guys can add to your game. A couple little live reads going on the turn, and when you add up the puzzle pieces and put them together, they just add up to a pretty easy call. Very next hand here, double board PLO bump pot. We've got 10-7-7-3, and flop 1 comes out 9-4-3, so just bottom pair. Board 2 comes 8-7 deuce. So we've got middle set on a very wet dynamic board with a flush draw. We are going to check here from early position, checks all the way around to the button, who goes 200. At this point, I think the button probably has something going on one of these boards. No one else has shown any interest in this pot. I think if someone did have pocket 8s or something like that from the field here, they would just come out and bet at a high frequency. Our 7s are going to be good on that board. Would like to just get this heads up with the button, if possible, drive everybody else out. So we are going to raise to 800 here. Now the player to our direct left is going to jam all in for less, for 775. Button jams all in for a little bit more. Well, at this point, we're in there. We did this to ourselves. We are going to call. Top board is a 6 of clubs, bringing in the front door flush. Bottom board is a deuce, so now we've got a full house on that board. Should be good a high percentage of the time. And the river is a 6 up top and a queen down below. So we show our hand here, and the button has ace, king, jack 9. So we actually had top pair and the nut club flush draw up top, and then a gut shot down below. And the button actually is going to get scooped here because the guy to our left with ace 6 4 deuce is going to make a runner full house on the top board. We have a full house on the bottom board, and we are going to chop up the button's money. Next hand here, maybe not in love with how I played this one. Let's talk about it. Straddle is on EP limps. We ISO 245 with pocket Kigleys on the button. The small blind is going to call, the straddle is going to call, and the EP limper comes along. 4 ways to it flop. Pretty good. King 5 deuce with a couple of spades. So we flop top set here. Checks over to us on the button. Gonna go really, really small here. We've got this board locked down. We got a king of spades in our hand as well. So gotta go really small. We go 50. Small blind is going to call. Now the straddle, who is an action player, is going to check raise to 150. He sometimes just pounces on small sizes and just runs airball bluffs if he senses weakness. So I'd like to continue giving this guy rope. He's gonna keep putting in money with his flush draws and his 2 pair anyway on most turns. We're just gonna gamble that we get a clean turn here and allow him to keep bluffing with his air. So we are going to call here, and now the small blind is going to overcall. Turn is not a great one for us. It is a 6 of spades. So some of the straights come in, the flush comes in, it checks all the way over to us on the button. And I think heads up, if we were just against the straddle here, we would just bet for value, trying to get value from 2 pair here when he checks. Just don't think he has a flush. But because the small blind is in there as well, I think this is just a little bit too thin. I think the small blind may just have a flush at some frequency here. So we are going to check it back, praying for a good river, and a good river we do not receive. It is an 8 of spades, bringing 4 to a flush. Now the small blind goes $200. Folds around to us on the button, and this is the guy who attempted to bluff us when we had trip 10s earlier, where he showed the ace of diamonds. I do think this bet, this small size, indicates a little bit of weakness. If he did have the ace of spades or queen of spades, if he did have the ace of spades, he'd probably just come out and bet bigger here on this river. Players just get greedy when they have the nuts. We have the king of spades, and I'm not even sure he would value bet with the queen of spades or jack of spades on this river. So it's the ace of spades or nothing. I think the ace of spades would put bigger. So we are going to bluff catch here. We call, and we are good. Big pot alert. All right, things are going absolutely swimmingly for us so far. We are running good. We are up a good chunk of change. The straddle is on. The button is going to limp, and we're going to limp along in the small blind with 5 deuce of hearts. Big blind calls and straddle checks. So we're 4 ways to a flop, which once again comes pretty good for us. 9 deuce deuce. We are going to check, let somebody stab in position. The straddle obliges. He goes $20 here, folds back around to us. We're going to put in a check raise. I don't think this guy's folding 9x at this point ever. He had just gotten stacked. He is stuck on the day, maybe a little bit tilted. So we're going to put in a check raise right now, start building a pot up. We go $100. Straddle's going to call. Heads up to a turn, which is a queen of spades. Can't go too big here. Would love for a 9 to stick around. So we go 200, and he is going to call once again. Now the river is a queen, double pairing the board. So we've got 2 queens and 2 deuces out there. Don't think he has a queen ever. If I was just raising with like backdoors on the flop and picked up a spade draw on the turn, if I was bluffing here on this river, I'm not sure I could get this guy to fold a 9, even if I went all in. Players get a little bit sticky on these paired boards, on these double paired boards. I just think if he has a 9, he thinks, well, you know what, maybe this guy wouldn't do this with a deuce. He doesn't have a queen. When our opponents have a strong range, I like to use big sizes for value, small sizes for bluffs. When our opponents have a weak range, I like to use huge sizes for value, medium to small sizes for bluffs. I think that's something people misinterpret. They just think I'm always going huge with overbet bluffs. That is not true here. We go overbet on the river with the goods. He is going to tank and tank and tank, and I start talking.
You know you got a 9. The thing about you having a 9 is I'm not sure you can call me.
He puts in the call. We are good, and we win another big pot. Another big pot alert. We are running quite good. That $100 an hour challenge is looking great. We look down at the second best hand in poker, pocket aces from earlier position, raised to $25. Folds around to the button, who is a player who is definitely on the tighter side, and he 3-bets to 100. This is just great. Everything is going swimmingly. And I think when he 3-bets to 100, he's just never folding to a 4-bet here. So he starts his hand about 800 effective. I'm gonna 4-bet to 300 because I think that reduces fold equity, and he's just going to jam all in for 800. We snap it off. Flop Jack 7-6. Turn is a 5, river is a 5, and we are going to win against pocket kings. So we get aces against kings. We are sun running early on in this session. All right, next hand here. This is a fun one with some table talk. The straddle is on EP limps, and we are on the button with king, queen off. We're gonna ISO here to $50. EP is going to call, and the flop comes 9-4-3. He checks it over. Absolute size of the pot is actually bigger here than standard in the game because we ISO'd over a limp when the straddle was on. So I think I'm actually going to have to size down on this flop if my goal is to incentivize him to raise off his strong shit and call with his weak shit, just because the pot's already $115, which is getting to be a pretty decent sized pot for a 5-5 game. So I actually size down here on the flop. I go $40, he calls. Now the turn is a 5 of spades, and at this point I think he's still relatively uncapped. He can have hands like 6-7 that now made a gut shot straight here on this turn. He can have hands like ace deuce that made the gut shot straight here on this turn, and he can have hands like pocket 5s or 5-4 suited, so we can still have some strong hands. I'm gonna go small here to incentivize him to raise off those strong hands and also call here when he does have hands like pocket 7s or pocket 8s, or even a hand like ace 4, ace 5 suited. So I go $80 here, and then I say,
I got pocket 8s. Getting a good price. I am getting a good price. 80?
he calls. River is now a 9 of spades, and at this point when he checks it over, when the board pairs, players just get much more sticky with their made hands. I think most of his range is going to be pocket pairs. So if I was value betting on this river with a hand like pocket kings, and I was trying to get called by pocket 8s or pocket 7s or something like that, I think I could probably go like 400, 450 on this river. Pretty big size for value to get called by pocket 8s, pocket 7s. So I'm gonna have to really size up here to get the stuff I want to fold. I go 650 into 355 on this river, and then I start talking.
You can beat 8s, you should call. If you can't, you should not call, because I'm going to show you pocket 8s. I'm pretty sure you know what I have. Yeah, but you know what I have. It's fair.
We were just sitting here sweating, praying for him to fold. Please, please fold. Finally, after a lot of time, he is going to fold.
Show me one card. No. Pick one. This one? Well, that's a good one to show.
Straddle's on, and cutoff raises to $40 here. The small blind calls, and we are in the big blind with 7-6 of clubs. So cutoff has a tighter range. Small blind has a tighter range because the straddle's on. So I just want to be squeezing here linear, good, better, and best. I don't want to squeeze. I don't really want to fold. By process of elimination, I call. Don't really love any of the options here, but straddle's going to come along as well. Maybe just folding is best since we're going to be out of position. Flop comes 5-4 deuce, so we are open-ended. Small blind checks, we check, and now the straddle donks. Very big, 125. When people donk multi-way, it's going to be a much stronger range than when people donk heads up. And when they donk with a big size, it's generally just going to be hands that are not nutted, but vulnerable. So it's going to be like sets and 2-pair. Probably not straights on this board, but I would expect this to just be very strong hands a lot. So it's going to fold back around to us. We are open-ended. We're going to call here and hope we can bink. And the turn is a 10 of clubs, so now we've got a club draw to go along with open-ended. We're going to check it over. Straddle's going to go big again, 225 here. We're just not loving this spot. We don't think we have a ton of fold equity by raising. I think this is just going to be 2-pair or a set a decent percent of the time here. So we are going to call. River is now a jack of spades, and coming out and donking doesn't really make much sense here, but we do have 7 high, so we're just done with it. We check, and surprisingly, he checks back, and he shows 5-3 offsuit. So how wrong were we? The most wrong. He just flopped top pair with a straight draw, donked huge, barreled the turn, and just absolutely owned us in his hand. So started off running good. The last couple hands, things going downhill a little, but possibly let's turn this thing back around and get back on track. Double board PLO bomb pot. Things have been spiraling fast for us, so let's get them back on track with a double board PLO bomb pot. Usually these help get things right back on the railroad tracks. So 6-handed here, 150 out there. We got ace, jack, 6-3. Board 1 comes ace, 10, 9. So we just have top pair there. Board 2 comes 7-4-3, so just bottom pair. Nothing really much going on. It checks to us on the button. We check it back. 9 up top and a jack down below. So now we still got top pair on the top board and 2-pair now on the bottom board. Checks all the way around to us on the button here, and maybe just checking back and just trying to get to showdown, just knowing we're probably winning the bottom board here a good percentage of the time is the best play. But I actually decide it's unlikely that someone has a strong 9 or a full house on the board where we have top pair. Someone did have 5-6 on the bottom board. Well, they would just come out and bet on the flop or on the turn. We think we just have the best hand there, and we can deny equity on the board where we just have top pair. So we are going to pot it, try to apply max fold equity here. Only the hijack calls, heads up to a river, which is okay for us. River is a queen of clubs up top and an 8 down below, and now the hijack donks all in for 405. I mean, we're definitely calling to chop here at best, but I do think this player could just have a hand like king jack or something like that. He called on the turn with top pair on the bottom board and a gut shot on the top board, and is now just jamming on the river because he made the Broadway straight. I think that is a possibility, and I think we're chopping more often than not, but maybe just not getting the price here to call to chop when we could be getting scooped a good percentage of the time. But I put in the tank call, expecting to chop at least some of the time here. But unfortunately, we lose on both boards to jack 8-8-7. River's a straight up top, River's a set down below, and we get scooped. I think in retrospect, this river probably should just be folded. We're calling to chop at best, and we just get scooped too much to have a profitable call here. Double board PLO bomb pot. At this point, I think it's likely that maybe we have upset the poker gods after these last few hands, because as much as they've rewarded us early in the session, they are punishing us now equally. But we look down at pocket aces in a double board PLO bomb pot on the button. Ace, ace, king, 7 suited to clubs, and it's 7 ways here, and it comes pretty good. Board 1 comes jack, jack, 6 with a couple of clubs, so we've got the nut flush draw on a paired board, so not the best, but board deuce comes ace, king, 4. So we got top set on one board and the ace high flush on the other board. Checks to the hijack, and the hijack pots for 175, and now it folds to us on the button. At this point, I think it's very likely, almost certain, that the hijack is playing the top board. Now, if he has a hand like king jack or queen jack or something like that, we are just free rolling here a lot of the time. Now, if he does have 6s, okay, we're going to chop it, but I'm just gonna put in the money and try to free roll him when he does just have a naked jack. So I raise to 700 here. Hijack puts in the money, 865, just about 165 more. I call. Board number 1 up top is an 8 of spades, and board 2 is a 9 of hearts, bringing in the front door flush on the turn. We don't love to see that. 4 of clubs up top on the river, and a queen of spades down below. And he flips over queen, jack, 6 deuce with a couple of hearts. So just the absolute worst case scenario for us. He flopped a full house up top with jack 6, and he actually had a flush draw on the second board to go along with it. And somehow, flopping the ace-high flush draw and top set, we get scooped here in this double board PLO bomb pot. We need a win. We need a win. Please reward us, poker gods. LoJack makes it 35, cutoff calls, and we're gonna come along here in the big blind with ace-3 of diamonds. Straddle isn't on. This is a really big open for the game. Flop comes 10-5 deuce, so we flop a gut shot here, and it checks around. And the interesting thing to note here is the relative position, right? The LoJack checked back on this flop. If he had a strong hand, it's a pre-flop raiser, he'd probably just bet on a relatively wet dynamic board. And now the cutoff, who is last to act after the LoJack checks, he checks back. So now we think both of these players on this board are capped. Turn is a 9 of clubs. Best way to apply max fold equity is to go for another check here, because most likely someone is going to stab, and neither player at any relative frequency has a strong hand when they both check back this board. So we're gonna check, go for the check raise here actually to maximize fold equity when the turn is a blank. We check, and the LoJack checks. Now the cutoff stabs 65, and like I talked about, I just think if he had a strong hand on the flop, he would bet on the flop. He's probably just got some showdown value type hands here, maybe some draws, maybe even some air, just monkey stabbing. So I'm going to check raise here, relatively big size, 325, trying to entice him to call with hands like Queen Jack or 7-8 or something like that. Call once, and then we can get a lot of that stuff to fold on the river if he bricks. But both players are going to fold and making something happen here, and we get one through. All right, next hand here, Under the Gun, who is a for-profit player, makes it 25. The button and small blind call. We look down at pocket Kigglies in the big blind. Poker gods have sent us on quite a roller coaster this session, but can they finally reward us? Let's see. We squeeze to 175, just a dream spot here. Just looks like we are full of it. And now the Under the Gun player is going to 4-bet to 400. When someone puts in 40% of their stack as the pre-flop raiser, right? That is just usually going to be aces. I don't know, if it was a rec player here, this would be one of those spots I would fold kings, but whatever. I put the money in, he snap calls, and he's got aces, and we're gonna need some help. Flop comes 8-7-3, no good. Turn is a 5, river is a 9, and we double up the man with pocket aces. I think just as a rule, anybody who puts in 40% of their stack pre-flop, 40% of the effective stacks, if you just fold everything but aces, you probably have the highest DV strategy. So quite a roller coaster of a session here. Started up like $3,600 or something like that in the first 45 minutes, and have been severely punished back down to earth in the last couple hours or so. And after this one, in a few of those hands, just feeling my patience running thin, so going to call it for the session. So somehow ended up just up about $150 after 6 hours. Just a wild ride of a session. Was up $3,400 at some point, and then ran kings into aces. Ran top set and a nut flush draw into full house and a flush draw. Then ended up scooping in a double board bomb pot. So just a pretty horrific run of events there over those last few hours. But it's gonna come down to the wire, guys. We are exactly, almost exactly right at $100 an hour. So Marco put the results here somewhere over here. And as always, you know what they say.
Danny Tanner is better than Tool Time Tim.
That's what they say.